The youngest team in the current Formula One grid, Aston Martin completed their second season in the sport as 7th in the constructors' standings last year. They started the 2022 season with a 5-year long-term plan to win a championship, as it is a long process to improve as a title contender from the back of the standings. Their experienced driver, Sebastian Vettel, decided to retire from the sport at the end of the 2022 season as he didn't see any improvement from the Silverstone-based team over 2 seasons. Vettel, as well as the majority of Formula One fans, thought that it was impossible for Vettel to win his 5th championship with a team like Aston Martin, which was not showing any improvement despite heavy investments. In the midway of last season, Vettel announced his retirement plan, and Aston Martin was in a big question about the vacant driver position, as they need an experienced one to fill that big hole left by a 4-time world champion. However, they were successful in winning the faith of 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso towards their Formula One program. Alonso, who was at the end of the Alpine contract in last season, decided to make his move to Aston Martin for the 2023 season. Everyone was surprised when he moved from the Alpine, which was 4th in the constructors' standings, to a team like Aston Martin, which stayed in the 7th position of the standings, but since the first race of the season. Alonso proved that his decision was not wrong, recording 3 consecutive podium finishes with his AMR 23. This is the biggest surprise of the season, as no one expected Aston Martin will show such a huge improvement by breaking suddenly to the top 3. Through this video, we are going to discuss the reason why we should focus on them more than any other F1 team in the 2023 season. Before we proceed, hit the subscribe button and smash the bell icon for more exciting updates. The Aston Martin brand is not something new to F1 in recent history. Once it appeared on the rear wing of Red Bull for several seasons as their title sponsor. However, that partnership came to end in 2019 as the Silverstone-based team had a plan of returning to F1 in 2021 after an absence of 61 years. Aston Martin owner Lawrence Stroll didn't want to establish a Formula One team which is competing just in the midfield. His involvement with the team was even before the rebranding of the team as Aston Martin. For the first time, he appeared in the Formula One arena when he brought the ownership of the former Force India F1 team, rebranding it as Racing Point F1 Team. He worked with former team principal Otmar Szafnauer since then. However, he was not happy with the progress made by the team under his leadership. So at the end of the first season as Aston Martin, team management decided to replace Otmar with Mick Crack, who was the former head of BMW's global motorsport operation. One major gap between Aston Martin and other top rival teams like Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari was the absence of a talented workforce in the factory. So Aston Martin management recruited a number of talented figures from the rival teams to strengthen their development process of the team. Lawrence Stroll expanded the workforce in Silverstone from 400 to 800 as a part of their rebranding process. This long list includes the head of Red Bull's aerodynamic team, Dan Fallow, Mercedes' chief aerodynamicist Eric Blandin, Red Bull's Andrew Alessi, and Alfa Romeo's Luca Ferbato. Red Bull has forwarded an accusation against Aston Martin that they have copied the RB19 in designing the AMR 23. Even though it is true or not, Dan Fallow has made a big impact on the designing of AMR 23, as he knows the majority of aerodynamic secrets used by Red Bull technical officer Adrian Newey in designing the Red Bull car. It is a rare case that a customer team of Mercedes like Aston Martin are performing well than the factory team. But in this year, it happened thanks to the great aerodynamic performance of the AMR 23's body design. Aston Martin's unofficial number 1, Fernando Alonso, is a 2-time world champion who is regarded as one of the finest talents that can be found in the entire history of the sport, despite the number of championships that he won. Already he has stood on 101 podiums with 32 wins. Alonso is the oldest in the current grid by age, but he is younger in skills than most of the current F1 drivers. He won his 2 champions almost 2 decades ago with Renault and missed the opportunity to win the championships with McLaren and Ferrari by very slim margins in 2007 and 2011. Unfortunately, he didn't get a competitive car throughout the last decade of his career. But everyone knows that he is an unstoppable beast in a more competitive car, and now he is driving the AMR 23, which is with the capability to win the 2023 championship. In the first two races, he was second only to Red Bull, which showed an extra pace relative to the AMR 23, but he gave a better fight to Ferrari and Mercedes with some catching defenses. Alonso's brave drive in Bahrain, passing Sainz and Hamilton in style to a podium finish, is wonderful, and it is a clear proof that his skills are not affected by his age. However, in the third race, he was beaten by his old teammate Lewis Hamilton thanks to the upgrades that Mercedes engineers introduced to W14 in Jeddah and Albert Park. So Aston Martin should be careful about this improvement of the Brackley-based team, as they didn't want one more opponent than Red Bull for the 2023 championship. Currently, Aston Martin's AMR 23 has only a small face deficit to the Red Bull team, which can be identified as the front-runner for the 2023 championship. But the Silverstone-based team is yet to introduce their first major upgrade of the 2023 season, and after this scheduled upgrade in Imola, their pace deficit with Red Bull will surely be closed to a greater extent, opening the Drivers' Championship towards Fernando Alonso as well. One key weakness that we saw within the Aston Martin setup is Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll is the son of team owner Lawrence Stroll, and his place within the Silverstone-based team is assured despite his level of performance. Stroll is talented, even though his performances are not in the caliber of Alonso, Hamilton, or Russell. But the main issue is the lack of consistency. It will hurt them more in the constructor standings, as it is essential to perform both drivers well to have a better ranking. We should not forget that they have a much more talented reserve driver, Felipe Drugovich, who was the F2 champion last year. What do you think about the current progress of Aston Martin F1 team? Can they beat Red Bull to clinch the 2023 championship? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe the channel to get more exciting Formula One news. See you guys in the next video. Goodbye.